As a fan of this sport, this video actually is kind of like sad for me to make in a way. Genuinely, folks, when I tell you, I love MMA, I love training, I love the principle behind martial arts, and there comes a point where I'm sat watching the UFC and I'm like, oh my word. I'm sitting literally watching one of the most boring fighters I've ever seen, and it kills the sport for me. This sport, for me, is my future. It's what I love to do. I train it every day. I'm away to Thailand for 3 months to train it. In about 25 days' time, leaving my hometown to go train in the best conditions in the world to become a champion. But before that, I have to sit back and truly evaluate the situation that we're in right now with the UFC, and we have a few very, very boring fighters, very close to the top of divisions, and I'm about to sit through and give you my top 5 most boring fighters in the UFC. I wrote about 20 fighters down, okay? I had about 20 fighters on a list, and I've narrowed it down to 5, okay? This video was requested in the comments of my Israel Adesanya is not a pay-per-view star video. So thank you very much for the idea, the inspiration to make this video, and I just thought it's a bit of a negative one today, a bit of a negative video to make. However, I'm going to make it. I'm going to sit back, I'm going to give you my thoughts. I'm going to give you 5 fighters that are the most boring fighters in the UFC at the moment, in my personal opinion. And if they weren't in the UFC, I don't think anybody would mind. And there's going to be a few in there that you're like, oh wow, that's interesting. But anyway, let's get right into this, guys. Number 5, right? This one was a weird one. I was between about 3 or 4 people for number 5. Just for like how I enjoy watching fights, and I love intensity. I love people like going out there trying to win and stuff like this. And you know, he fought recently against Kevin Holland. That probably gives away who it is. Michael Chiesa. It's a weird one, I know, because I've never thought of Chiesa to be known as incredibly boring, but I just think he just goes in there just with no urgency, no nothing, doesn't want to win, holds you against the cage. I mean, his fight with Neil Magny was absolutely atrocious. It was actually like, it actually looked a lot like a Holly Holm fight, a lot of women's MMA sort of stuff, like just holding double unders, knee in the body, getting separated, getting back to that position. And just, it was between him or Neil Magny for number 5, but then, you know, I think Neil Magny in the past few years has picked up much better wins than Chiesa. You know, he hasn't been as high up in the rankings as Chiesa has in his career. However, I think recently Michael Chiesa has just been a bore to watch. No one would care if he retired. He really shows nothing in the octagon. He brings nothing to the table anymore when it comes to any sort of marketability, because you know what you're getting with Chiesa. He's a submission guy that can't really find submissions, so it just becomes this kind of clinch fest, and then if he does get you down, he just sits in half guard, and it's like doing no damage, very minimal, even total strikes, forget significant strikes. And I think Michael Chiesa is a bore to watch. I respect him as a man. You know, he seems like a likable guy. I don't like his haircut, I don't like much about him, but he seems like a likable guy to a lot of like genuine good people, and I just have to put him in the 5th most boring fighter in the UFC right now, him or Neil Magny. I could make an extended video to this, like a few honourable mentions, but we'll throw Neil Magny in there as an honourable mention as well. However, I couldn't put Neil Magny in the top 5. But when boring comes to mind, Michael Chiesa is on my mind, to be honest, and it's just a wee bit like, oh Jesus, Michael, like, I just can't bear to watch him fight, to be honest with you. But next one, number 4. This one, I could have put at number 1, if I'm being 100% honest. I hate this man. Like, I can't stand watching him fight. Every time I watch him fight, I think to myself, okay, this one could be different. He could just flick a switch and actually seem like he wants to win or wants to get a finish. But I think from now on, anytime he fights, I'm just not going to bother watching. I'm just going to go make myself a coffee or something. And he's top 15 in the world right now without getting a finish, but he does have a good amount of wins in the UFC. Lerone Murphy. It wouldn't be like Lerone Murphy to ever try and get a finish. It wouldn't be like Lerone Murphy to ever try and get a finish. Absolutely appalling. His fight style is appalling. He's a terrible fighter. Holds you in a double leg position against the cage. on the feet, throws a few jabs, maybe a light tap and leg kick, doesn't ever show any ability to finish a fight, doesn't ever show any urgency to finish a fight. And do you want to know what I hate most about fighters, right? It's the ones that say, meet me in the middle, I'm going to come for you, I'm going to take your head off, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to do all that. Then when they get in there, they hold you against the cage, or they don't fucking fight you. And it's like, wow, you've said all this, you've said all that, and now you're literally doing this? Fucking pathetic. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's appalling to watch. It's horrible to watch. And look, this is just one of those things, and regardless of what you want to say about Lerone Murphy and his fight style, he's so boring to watch. He's dull, no personality. Goes on about Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood's had 4 fights at featherweight, and they potentially have been 4 of the best featherweight fights we've seen from a prospect in the past, 10 years. You know, Nathaniel Wood's fights at featherweight are exciting. Charles Rosa, great fight. He battered Charles Rosa. It looked exciting. It was bloody. Charles Jourdain had a bit of full guard game in round 2, but apart from that, really good fight. Now he's in the pocket boxing. Third one, who the fuck was the third one against? Andre Feely. You know, that fight was great. A great, entertaining first round, a great second round, and the third round was alright as well. And he's coming up to fight in next week in Abu Dhabi. So, you know, whatever you want to say about Lerone Murphy, Nathaniel Wood will always be his dad. Lerone Murphy has no intensity, no nothing, no want to win. And I always say this. I was sat watching Lerone Murphy fight with my friend Paul, right? We were sat, it was UFC London, last UFC London. I was sat and I said that Paul, my friend, he's not big into MMA, and he was like, this is so shit, Finn. He was like, why did you watch this? And I literally I screamed at the TV, I went, it's not like Lerone Murphy to ever want to get a finish. Fucking ridiculous, it's pathetic. The man's afraid, the man's scared. I think I'd mince Lerone Murphy, whatever though. But this next fight, guys, this next fighter, number 3 fighter on the most boring fighters in the UFC. I'm going to get hate for this one. I know I'm going to get hate for this one. But before I tell you who it is, just because of the level he's fighting at, does not give him an excuse to go out there and literally rob fans of their hard-earned money and just be a pussy in the octagon. And it's nothing to do with tactics. It's nothing to do with tactics. Israel Adesanya, number 3 most boring fighter in the UFC, without a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's top 3 most boring to watch. Even the Alex Pereira fight, the second one. Don't blink, I'm going to walk him like a dog, I'm going to do all this. Don't blink, it'll be done in 1. He goes out there, what did he do the first round? Scoots around the octagon, getting leg kicks this time. Trying to land his own leg kicks. He threw a jab at one point. It's abysmal. Whenever he knocks someone down in the past few years, it's always been that lean back left hook. And it's so blatantly obvious. He's like, oh, don't hit me, but I'm going to counter with this. And he gets it. And fair play to him. I've said in many videos, he's an incredible fighter, an incredible champion, an incredible athlete. And the sport deserves him. And he deserves to be in the sport. But he is so boring. Guys, I don't think you understand. He had the Yoel Romero fight. He had the Whittaker fight, number 3 against Whittaker. Or number 2, whatever the fuck it was. And I'm just sat there like, I just can't handle it. I just can't watch him. He drives me nuts. He's getting paid so much money. I reckon he's getting paid $2.5 million to show. Or something like that. $5 million a fight. So sorry. And it's just like, I just don't get it. It grinds my gears because he's so dull. The Vettori fight was terrible. The Whittaker 2 fight was awful, which he arguably lost. Cannonier fight was a snooze fest. Pereira was a snooze fest until he got knocked out. Pereira 2, he was running around afraid. And then recently, the Strickland fight, he just got absolutely battered. Like, there was no, like, and then we kind of seen his true colours because, you know, you can say against Kelvin Gastelum, he was prepared to die and all that. And that was a really good fight, actually. But Izzy was forced to fight like that. Izzy was forced to get into a dogfight to win. If Israel Adesanya is not forced into a dogfight, he's happy to jab and leg kick and not get hit because he's a pussy, you know. And I understand not getting hit and being hit, but compare him to someone like Max Holloway or someone like this, and it's just like, wow. Or Volk even. Volkanovski's a fucking killer, and he's a true champion, and he finishes people. Izzy is just ridiculous, and he's an excuse for a champion. I don't think he's a phenomenal champion. I think he's an appalling, abysmal disgrace to the sport. And whatever. That's my take. You've all heard what I have to say about Izzy before. He's extremely boring. He only gets into firefights if he's dragged into them. He's not impressive to watch. He's not an impressive fighter. He's really, really not, in my opinion, overrated. He's overrated massively. People don't seem to understand how bad the middleweight division is in terms of skill level. You know, skill level in the middleweight division, maybe outside of Whittaker, is probably 2 out of 10. I mean, if you shrunk Izzy down and you gave him a height and reach advantage and you put him in at bantamweight, he'd get smoked by Jan. He'd get smoked by all these guys. He reminds me of a Jai Herbert. Like, literally, that's what Izzy reminds me of. And Jai Herbert's also an extremely boring fighter, so that's a little honourable mention for you. But we're going into number 2. There's 2 fighters that I think I think everyone would expect to be at the top of this list, but I'm going straight in for this one. Number 2. I was so tempted to put this guy at number 1. I was so tempted. You know what? I was so tempted to put him at number 1, but we're gonna just we're gonna go out there and do this, okay? I was so tempted to put this guy at number 1. He's not going at number 1. He's going at number 2. Mainly because he has had a knockout recently. And he's on a really good win streak. And regardless of... You know what? Let's just say it. Belal Muhammad. Arguably the most boring fighter in the UFC's history. Arguably the... How can someone be so bad yet at the top of a division? He is absolutely awful, but it works. He has no power, yet he knocked out Sean Brady. He dominated Gilbert Burns because Gilbert Burns injured his arm and still took him to a decision. You know, and there's all this stuff like, oh, Hamzat Chimaev and Gilbert Burns went to war for 3 rounds and then Belal just 50-45'd them. Belal couldn't finish someone with one arm. And Belal talks so much shit, but you have to understand, he gives nothing to the company. You can't promote Belal. Oh, it's actually winding me up speaking about it because Belal Muhammad is so boring. Like, his personality, first of all, is boring, but we're here to more talk about fight style, you know? And I genuinely think when he said, I'm a man, Kobe man, Kobe. I think Kobe would wipe the floor with him. Edwards was wiping the floor with him. Young, well-rounded mixed martial artists would piece him up. You know, Vicente Luque is a different striker when you implement the threat of a takedown. Vicente Luque, I think, is going to look absolutely phenomenal against Ian Garry. I think Ian Garry will take that, but I think he'll look phenomenal just because there's not much of a takedown threat. But when I tell you, Belal Muhammad, because he's got that takedown threat, he can survive on the feet. But it's also just the clinching and the trips and just lying in half guard and the personality and the way he talks shit despite being genuinely one of the most boring fighters on the roster. And I will say this, I really do respect Belal for fighting absolutely anyone to get his title shot. And now I think he's reaching a point where he's like, literally, I'm beating all these guys and I'm still not getting the shot. It's a business. You have to offer the company something. If you don't offer the company anything, realistically, you're not going to get a title shot. I mean, unless you have beaten absolutely everyone and you 100% deserve it. Belal Muhammad as champion will be the day I kill myself. I'm just throwing that out there. because I genuinely cannot handle him as a champion because he drives me nuts, and I was tempted to put him in number 1, but I think number 1 has been reserved for a very, very special little man. But as I said, Belal Muhammad, second most boring fighter in UFC history. There's no power behind anything, holds you against the wall, drags you down. It's just absolutely abysmal fighting. You can't call you. Yeah, man, I'm a professional fighter. You can't call yourself a fighter, Belal. Shut the fuck up. You're not a fighter. You're a fucking blanket. You're a wet fucking blanket. Shut up. You're not a fighter. Like, shut up. You're terrible at fighting. I don't know how you fluked your way into the top 5 of a division. You are awful. The fact you beat Darino Burns pisses me off so much because it was a fluke. Shut up. Shut your mouth. You're a fucking beaked little arsehole. Clean your teeth, you fucking little rat. Yeah, man, I'm a fighter. You're not a fucking fighter. You're nothing like the sort. You're nothing of the sort. You are an abysmal excuse for a human being. Be quiet. Sit down, Belal. You owe anybody everything. You owe everyone a good fight. And a personality. Belal, remember the name Muhammad. Oh my god. Remember the name. Anytime I have had someone sitting with me watching the Belal fight, oh yeah, who's he? The guy with the dirty teeth and the one who just holds you against the wall. You're a UFC fighter. Oh, you've never gotten a bonus though. Clean your teeth. Anyway, number 1 on the list. Number 1. Now this was between, Belal was going to go in number 1, but I've decided to put this little dog of a gremlin in number 1. I don't actually mind him. I used to absolutely hate him, but now I can kind of just like laugh at him, like, oh holy shit, like what a little man. Merab Dvalishvili. Holy shit, I made a video on him a few days ago. The reason he's number 1, okay, the most boring fighter in the division, is because when he fought Peter Yan, everyone thought, okay, this actually has the potential to be a really good fight. A mixed martial arts bout, a bit of striking, boxing, wrestling. Right? Now, hear me out on this. This is my point. It's a long-winded point. So then you'd think, oh, he might not actually be that boring, you know, this because with Belal, there's never a potential of a good fight. You know, it's always going to be a terrible fight. With Merab, I thought, oh, this could be a good fight. But Merab has this is why he's number 1. This special talent of turning what could be an incredibly good fight in terms of even just Merab dominating or Yan dominating or like an exciting fight. He can turn that into the most boring, incredibly boring fight. That is why Merab is number 1. He can use his awful technique and awful pressure. His cardio is immensely insane. He just does something so badly until he wins. He takes you down, he fails the takedown, then he tries again, then he fails that takedown. Then he tries again, then he goes for it again. Holy shit. And it's not exciting because he's failing every single time, but obviously the judges are going to be like, well, he's controlling him. You know? Suppose he's controlling him. Then he'd accidentally headbutt you and make your eyes swell up. And then it's like, oh, right, okay, so he didn't punch me, but he's still fucking winning and now I'm damaged. Like, you know, Merab Dvalishvili is an incredible talent for making fights shit. The same way Aljamain Sterling has that talent. Merab is awful. He's been knocked out before. You know, he's lost before. I genuinely think O'Malley probably knocks out Merab and just gets rid of him once and for all. He's not a good grappler. He can't get you to the ground. He can't do any of this and that. But he's just so persistent and he's got such great cardio and he just grabs you and holds you and it's just so fucking dull. It's like, ugh. At least with Belal, he's gotten a knockout in the past year or two, you know? That's the only difference here. Fuck my life. It's awful. It's absolutely awful to watch. And it's just so... Ugh. Fucking hell. Anyway, yeah, Merab number 1. Probably one of the most hated men in the UFC outside Belal and Aljo. Aljo Merab, I've made a video on it before of this weird little relationship and it's horrible to watch and it's abysmal to watch. But there you go, guys. The top 5 most boring fighters in the UFC. I don't even need to speak much on Merab, to be honest. I spoke a lot on Belal, a lot on Izzy, a lot on Lerone. there you go, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Give me your thoughts on who you think could have made this list. I think my list is very accurate. I think my list is extremely, very well made and very accurate. And, you know, I think the only one that you could really excuse from this list would be Michael Chiesa and swap Chiesa out with someone else. So who would you swap Chiesa out with, guys? Let me know. And I will see you all in my next video coming very soon. Thanks very much for watching, guys. What a video.